Hey there, and welcome to the New York City MuleSoft Meetup. Today we'll be talking about maximizing productivity with MuleSoft Composer and MuleSoft RPA. My name is Catherine Wills. A little bit about me. I grew up in Georgia. I moved to New York City 2 years ago. I have a little over 2 years of MuleSoft development experience, and some of my hobbies include watching the Georgia Bulldogs and the Braves, as well as visiting history museums, going skiing, and baking. So automation with MuleSoft. Let's start with hyperautomation. So hyperautomation is the approach and the idea of saying, let's take the business and the IT processes that can be automated and let's automate them so that we can maximize our productivity. And let's do that by utilizing various automation tools and technologies such as the ones you see here. We've got RPA, which we'll see later in our demo, AI, which will be used within our RPA as well as OCR. And then we also have our natural language processing as well as machine learning. So how does MuleSoft automation enable this idea of hyperautomation? So we've got these three things kind of encompassing this MuleSoft automation idea and mechanism. So we've got our system integrations, which are managed by our IT teams. This is your endpoint platform, your legacy systems, your cloud hub, your on-prem systems. And then down at the bottom, we have our process automation and our human task automation. And so those are both ran by your business teams. So we've got our composer, which is your software as a service. And then we've got our robotic process automation, RPA, which is your legacy systems, your images, and your docs, which we'll see later how RPA can extract data from those docs or images. And so together, let's talk about the advantages of them together. So Composer and MuleSoft can both be used together or separately on their own. And so some advantages are you have an increased business agility. You have an ensured reliability because you're eliminating human error. Your time is reduced on these repetitive manual tasks in an effort to then maximize your productivity. You're enhancing the quality of just overall of your work and work that can be done without having to spend time on these repetitive manual tasks. And you and your team are eliminating this user handling of these tedious tasks and just overall just maximizing productivity, which obviously is the title of the meetup. So let's start first talk about MuleSoft Composer. Composer's biggest thing is using clicks instead of code. We'll see that a lot, clicks instead of code. And it does that to effortlessly build these automated processes for your data. So some of the capabilities include automating various business processes, as well as quickly and securely connecting to other systems to retrieve and or input data. We'll see that how we can quickly just sign in to a system without having to kind of mess with tokens and connect and those sort of messy connections there. And then we've got your functionality. So what it does, it uses a flow, okay, we're going to call it our flow, to create different tasks such as creating or updating records. You can also create a record in one system and go populate it in another. That's kind of just that functionality and the main idea of Composer and what you can do with it. So some of the use cases, we've got our Salesforce synchronization. So one organization to another organization. We've got our ticket to task to alert. So, decreasing your time spent on a Jira task after creating a ServiceNow ticket so that you can reduce the resolution time and escalate that ticket to a certain Slack channel, what have you, and we'll actually say that next. And then we've got our quote to cash integration, so automating the creation of sales orders after an opportunity closes and automatically notifying your billing team. So before we dig into that, we're going to look at how to create a flow, which is used in Composer. So the first two steps are kind of our main ones. First, we're going to choose a trigger. What's going to start your flow? Are you going to schedule it on a certain time? Is it going to run at a certain time? Or are you going to choose a system so that it either runs on a new email or a new task is created or something like that? Once you've chosen your trigger, you're then going to go through and define your different steps. So different action steps are going to be taken throughout the flow. And what you can do is utilize data from previous triggers and steps to input into the next new step and system. So this right here is your main sort of meat of the flow creation, right? After all is said and done, you are going to test your flow. You want to locally test your flow, of course, before you put in production, and I'll show that in our demo. And then once all is said and done, you're ready to go to production, you can activate that flow and hands off from there essentially. But of course, you can also monitor your flow, which also can kind of be done by those IT teams that we talked about. So yeah. So here are the systems available for connections. You'll see that a lot of them are very familiar. We've got our Google Calendar, our Gmail, our Microsoft Teams, our Jira, all these good things, Slack, Tableau. And then that next step portion I was talking about, after a step, you can then choose a different systems to sort of populate. You can also create or update variables, and you can also input some logic for some if-else blocks or for each, or even put in your own error handling. So I know we talked about a lot of clicks instead of code, but there is a little bit of code. So we've got our custom expression editor. And so what it does is it can manipulate data in Composer by building different expressions and applying functions. And so what it does here is it uses these input parameters of another function to then input your data into later steps. It kind of walks you through and gives you examples here, explains what it will do. Obviously, capitalize. What it's going to do is going to capitalize the first letter of your word. But this editor also supports string functions, number functions, date functions, data types, and it kind of walks you through all these things. And as you're going through, it'll also kind of have a little spinny thing there, and it's going to tell you whether or not everything is okay, and whether or not the syntax that you've written is okay. And so it's really quick, real time, and we'll see that in our demo. So our demo, we're going to do a ticket case escalation. So what we're going to do is we're going to trigger the flow with ServiceNow or Zendesk, which I'm using in place. And then we're going to create a task from the ticket in Asana, which is kind of like a Jira. And then my Slack message is going to be sent to my support channel. So the idea here is, so this is Composer, and I'm going to do it in real time so you can kind of see like how fast can this be done. All right, so I'll do create from scratch. We'll call it ticket case escalation. All right, and I'm going to start with Zendesk. So I've already actually logged in, but it is really simple. Say I do want to, I can go to add a one, and then I can put a name, and then the URI from the Zendesk, and then connect, and then it'll have me sign in there. All right, so on a new or updated ticket, I want to then put in Asana, which is going to do my task. And so I'm also only going to have the task description here. You can also, deselect or select these. All right, I'm going to pick from a list, and I only have one, MuleSoft demo. Okay, so my task name is going to come from my subject. So here you'll see a lot of this is, once you have already kind of put this in test before, it kind of gives you an example of some past tickets that were created and what data that was, so you can get an idea of what that data, what that field is for your data that you're populating. All right, let me go ahead and add Slack. I'm going to message my Slack channels, post message to the channel. Let me pick from a list, and I'll pick the support team. I'm going to use a custom message. I will say howdy, y'all. Or howdy, support team. I created a ticket and a task. Ticket ID. I'll just give them a heads up of the ticket ID. Ticket name. Obviously, this can be sort of done customized, just kind of showing a quick idea. So my name is going to be the subject. Thanks. And it's gonna validate my syntax. I'm gonna apply it. Let's see, I'm gonna take that off. We'll put a bot name, and I will say the requester ID. All right, so I think everything is good. So we'll go ahead and save that and run it and test. All right, while that is running, so it's going to take a second for it to kind of come up. These are old. Yeah, okay, so gonna add here. All right, so let's say database connection is down. Database 123 connection is down. Help, or whatever you want to put. I'm going to submit this ticket as new once I know. Yep. Okay. So what it does here, I'm going to go ahead and submit it because it does take a second. What it does here is once you click that test button, it's going to take a second to kind of wind up, and you have 10 minutes to start your trigger event. Okay. And so it gave me 10 minutes to create a ticket here, which is here, my database connection is down. And then what it's going to do, once it picks up, it will then create a task, and then I should get a Slack message as well. So while that's doing that, let's see. So this was an old one. I know that I was doing a test one, so I'll just go and delete this. All right, still waiting. So it does take a second sometimes when you're testing to pick up those tickets. While it is doing that, I'll kind of explain. So this is MuleSoft Composer. These were those triggers I was talking about. It can pick up a trigger or you can schedule that, and then of course you pick your different steps as you go down the line. I just had two simple ones. I wanted to create the task, and then I wanted to post to my Slack channel. All right, now it's processing. Okay, all right, the test is finished. So let's go ahead and check out Asana. It says, yep, database connection is down. It is now in my help desk. And let's check Slack. Yep, there you go. Howdy, support team. I created a ticket and a task. Ticket ID 7, ticket name DB, connection is down. Thanks. All right, and that was my requester ID in case you wanted to know who did write that in. So there you go. And these are obviously ones from my test. But anyways, the idea of that is, that took maybe 5-ish minutes or so just to create that simple composer flow. Just wanted to kind of point out how easy and fast and using these clicks instead of code was. So let's jump over to MuleSoft RPA and then see how they work together. All right, so MuleSoft RPA, robotic process automation. It utilizes bots to automate various processes and tasks with the goal of maximizing your productivity and reducing human errors. So what are its capabilities? It can automate, or it will automate, repetitive manual processes that require human input. It can interact with systems without API accessibility. And then it can also replicate users' actions from desktop to another application. So we'll see that a little bit later in some slides. And then functionality, what it's doing is bots here are tasked to script different or use instructions and to perform these repetitive tasks. The user task also mimic a human's actions to generate script instructions. Then you also have order, which can be utilized to record the exact actions of a user. So some RPA use cases, the biggest one that a lot of people use and can be used for is to extract and enter data from various file types. So we've got our PDF, our CSV, JPEG, and other file formats. We can process payroll, so automating payroll data entry and validate information across systems. We can process refunds by automating the processing of customer refund requests. And we can update customer data as well to update those systems that don't have an API through that are only accessible through the UI. All right, so RPA does have a RPA lifecycle. And so the first stage here is evaluation. So here you're evaluating the qualification and the cost and benefit of automating the process. In this one, you'll see where business teams can come, they can put in what they're, what they want and what the idea is, and then kind of give a cost analysis within that. After it's passed, you design it. You design the actions in the workflow by dragging and dropping or using an RPA recorder, which we'll see. And then you also have the build. So this is kind of the big sort of deal here. So using RPA builder, which we will see, to instruct actions and bots of automated processes, of the automated process. So, and then finally, you would test it, create various tests to confirm your functionality, such as quality assurance. And then then you also have your deployment. So using RPA Manager to set up deployment configurations, and then finally monitoring it once it's live. Okay. So this is sort of the RPA lifecycle, and we'll kind of dig in a little deeper as well. So RPA Manager, that's the one that I talked about with the evaluation. This is the big one. So in this one, you are managing every step of the automation journey, from deciding whether or not this process can be automated, deciding on what it entails, does it meet the requirements of being repetitive, and what's the cost analysis? Are you going to get a really good ROI on this? Your return on investment, is it going to be enough as we automate this process? You've got your RPA builder. So this is where you can build and debug RPA processes with low-code tools that we'll see. And then we've got our RPA recorder. So here it can instantly record and capture action steps of the business processes. And then finally, we've got our RPA bot. So software robots that execute assigned automation steps. So this you won't see, but it's there. So this is what is actually kind of doing that work. All right, so deeper into RPA Manager, like I said, this is where you are going to evaluate potential automated processes, deciding whether or not can it be done, give a cost analysis. This is where you're going to govern and monitor and analyze all of your different RPA processes. And you can also set up customized alert rules to decrease the time to troubleshoot your errors, to figure out what's happening, what's wrong, where is it wrong, where did it go wrong, and that kind of thing. Your RPA builder. So this is an on-prem application, and this is where you're going to use the business process model and notation, where you can kind of sort of build out all of your RPA things here. And so here you can choose from what's called the wizard, sort of a wizard-based toolbox here to configure instructions for your RPA bots. MuleSoft has a lot of documentation on each of these. Or you can also create and use pre-built templates. So this is something maybe developers can go in and make those templates for other business users to use, or business teams to use. And then also you can debug your processes instantaneously, which is what I did when I was creating the demo that we'll see today. All right, so RPA Recorder. This is an on-prem tool as well, used during the building phase that records action steps from the local environment of the user. So what it does is once you hit record, it tracks where's your mouse going, what is it clicking on, what keyboard inputs are you putting. And so during this, you can also add comments and variable information. And then your RPA bot, these are the actual these are the robots that are doing what you want it to do. These are, it requires a computer where the applications required for the process are installed. So there's that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to carry out those steps step by step as you are instructing it to do what you want it to do. All right, so let's get into our Composer and RPA demo. But before we do that, I want to talk a little about what is happening. So what's our use case? So maximizing our productivity, obviously a big title of today's MuleSoft meetup title. So our use case is a vision clinic, okay? Vision clinic. And so what's going to happen is we want to insert, we want to update or insert patient information. And, we also want to give that diagnosis. And so here at the top, follow along with me. I think you can see my mouse here. Yep. So administration sends the patient information. So your receptionist and those people are going to send in that patient information to a certain area. It can also be done. It won't be done today, but it has been done in my demos before, where you can actually do this with handwriting. So you can do this with handwriting. You can do this with typed. Obviously, it's going to work better with typed based on different handwriting, but I have tested this with handwriting. Just today's demo for this recorded meetup is only going to show a PDF typed version. And then the medical professional sends their diagnosis. And I'll explain a little bit more about that a little lower. So once those are both sent, my composer is triggered. Once my composer is triggered, my RPA process is going to kick off. And it's going to extract my patient information data from the PDF that the administration sends. Again, I can do that both with an image from taking a pic, like for example, taking a picture of someone who hand wrote their information, or I can do it with a PDF. Okay, and I can also, it's also going to extract my patient diagnosis data. And why it's going to do that is I'm also going to send it to a MuleSoft API that I created that has a ChatGPT API that's reaching out to ChatGPT to generate a diagnosis explanation for the patient. And then what it's going to do is going to enter patient information and diagnosis to the system. It's going to update staff of the patient edition in Slack today for our demo purposes. And then it's going to email that diagnosis explanation to the patient. So a little bit of high-level process before I get a little bit deeper. So we've got our admin inbox. So the patient patient information form and the patient diagnosis is going to go to set it off and trigger the composer. It'll then send to the RPA, and the RPA bots are going to use Amazon TextTrack, which is a tool that's like already ingrained, and I'll show you in a little bit. And that's where it's extracting that data. Then it's going to send it off to a MuleSoft ChatGPT API that will ask ChatGPT to give me a diagnosis or explanation of the diagnosis and send it back to me. And I'll explain that in a second as well. And then it's going to send back and put that information into Google Sheets. And then it's going to send emails and Slack messages to my staff about my updated patient, and then also send an email to my patient about their diagnosis. All right, so let's go ahead and get in it. All right, so here we have, this is Composer. This is where it's starting. So it's going to start on an email. In this case, what I'm going to do is on the side here, I'm going to email two things. I'm going to email patient information form and a patient diagnosis, and I'll show those in a sec as well. And then it's going to use RPA. It's going to hit RPA, okay, connecting to RPA, which I'll show in a sec. And that's where it's going to extract the data as well as give it back, and then also pinging that MuleSoft ChatGPT API that I made. And then it's going to come back and it's going to put both of those things into my Google Sheet, my patient information and my patient diagnosis, as well as updating my Slack channels and emailing my patient. And so while that is going, so it's going to wait for my test to start, I'm going to go ahead and hit these. Okay, while those are running there, I'll explain a little bit about, so this is your RPA builder. This is the first step here. We've got retrieve email and attachments. And what it's doing here is it's looking for that email, and it's going to get that, and it's going to grab my PDF attachments. And after it does that, it's going to extract my data. It's going to extract my data and set them as variables so that I'm able to bring it back to my MuleSoft Composer to use. Okay, so it's going to each key and each field here is extracting that data and that value to send back And then it is also extracting, so it's a little long. And then it's also extracting my patient diagnosis as well. But it's also going to send that patient diagnosis to my MuleSoft. It's going to do a REST call to my ChatGPT API. All right, so it did finish with errors, but what I can do is, it looks like it was my RPA. So what I'm going to do is show you a little bit about how we can troubleshoot. So to do this, I had to go ahead and put RPA into production. So what I'm going to do, here's your RPA. So RPA, going to go to demo automations, which is where mine is. These are our process automations. All right, so what it can do, let me update this in the last hour. Okay, so interesting, because it did say that it finished. Interesting. Let me check the log. It even has a log. All right, so it actually said success. Finished during first one try. Let's do this. Let's try it again. All right, I'm going to go ahead and set up patient information. All right. Of course, you know the fun demo, how everything does not work during the live, even though it works just before you start the live. So all is well. All right, so testing, go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and send these off. Before I do that, I'm actually gonna delete these. Actually, it's fine. So what it did is, I have 4 folders. I've got a new patient information folder and a new patient diagnosis folder. And after they are read, they do then get put in the completed one. I'll just go ahead and delete that for this purpose. I will say one of the things I was saying before, so this, where it's extracting the data, I'm using, so this is my toolbox here. It was extracting data using this AWS Amazon Textract key values with AWS. And so that's what it was using, which is also kind of using, so which also uses AI. And part of that is some of my values started to change because it realized what it also meant. All right, let's see. It is processing, and let's see if it does wig out again or if it does go on. So while that is happening, I'll go ahead and so these were from my tasks. Go ahead and delete those. What it does is I do have it, I have in my RPA, after it retrieves those emails, it puts those emails into certain labels. And so these are my patient information and my patient diagnosis, which were just sent and already, so my RPA is already kicked off. So this was the patient information. We've got Mary Nell Barrett. This is her patient information. And I can tell that my RPA is already running because it is 8:17 now, and it's already moved it into 8:16. And so when it moves, oh, hey, it completed, I think. Let's see. Aha, there we go. And there's my, today at 8:17, it's 8:18. It worked. Let's see. There you go. So this is Composer. This is, there's my vision clinic case. So we've got checks all around. Yeah, not entirely sure why it wasn't working beforehand. I do know, though, that when it did tell me that there was error in RPA, RPA said, no, there's no error. This is all success runs. It has in the past told me, so here in my RPA, I've got just these 3 different tasks, right? And so what it does is it does tell me if something were to fail, where is it going to fail? So like I said, So let's just look at a patient information. What it was doing was, so here, if you look, I have something called primary group number. So that's for your insurance information. What the Amazon text track was doing, it was then turning it to primary group and writing out the word number, even though here in my JSON data, I have it, let me go to primary or mobile number. So for example, mobile number, I have it set out to look for mobile and then that hashtag for number. And what the Amazon text track was starting to do is it was starting to transform mobile hashtag into the word mobile number. And then here, the extract data step would fail because it could no longer locate mobile and then NUMBER number, spelling it out, which then failed here, which I was able to then see usually in the bot message log here, where it was not able to extract that data in the in that step. But I do have an idea. So I do have an idea of what may have failed this time before this. In the RPA, it is sending to, let me see. It is sending my that patient data to, actually I'll go here. So I'm getting my patient info just to check. So this is just a verification to ensure that the patient info and the patient diagnosis that I have, even though they're on different documents, are together. And they're on different documents just to kind of help with that, personal patient data. And so what it's doing now is it's going to separate into two different things. Is this patient a child or is this patient an adult? And what I wanted to do is here you see, write a concise message to an adult in easy to understand wording to explain the diagnosis, So what I'm sending to ChatGPT is just the diagnosis. ChatGPT doesn't get any of a patient's personal data. As far as their name and birth date and information, they only get the diagnosis. So then it returns that message back. So this one, what I have is if I think it's 18, yeah. So greater. So if the patient is 18 or older, they'll get the adult response. If they're under 18, they'll get a child response. And what it says is write a message that an adult can use to explain to a child the diagnosis of . And so that is what. So this was my RPA builder. It's that retrieving that email and attachments, extracting the data, sending just the diagnosis to that ChatGPT, using my MuleSoft ChatGPT API. Like you saw, it checks that patient data and the diagnosis before it, says, accidentally sends a wrong diagnosis to the wrong patient, and then it hits and just returns that diagnosis message. So we've got Marino, Porter, and in Composer, what it did is after RPA, it then added patient information to the Google Sheet, added patient information patient diagnosis to the Google Sheet, which is here. So we got our Marino Barrett, which we just sent, okay? And then her patient diagnosis, the patient IDs are, right here, and that's how I know she has lattice degeneration. So, and what it does here is a patient diagnosis for that thing, and it's of course you could put this in a draft, but just to give an idea of and of course you could also email just that email that was provided in the patient information, which was here, the Elizabeth Barrett, which seemed to be the mother of the patient, which is the patient was under the age of 18. So here's the patient diagnosis. What it's saying is, dear child, and it kind of gives you an idea of what the adult can kind of say to tell their kid about what lattice degeneration is, and because that was their diagnosis. All right, and so let's see. So that was my Composer. All right. Yeah, okay, so that's about it. I did want, okay, so the other part of why I think this section failed the last time, even though it said success. So ChatGPT takes this, if you've ever used ChatGPT, it does take a second to kind of generate those responses. And so this does have some sort of a timeout sort of mechanism. And so what possibly happened is it could have possibly timed out within RPA and then just wasn't enough to get back in time, which is why we saw it fail that first time and not the second time. And then also here, it also, in that last step was that it sent that Slack message to patient information updates. So Mary Nell Barrett, patient ID has been updated in the patient information spreadsheet, which was here, just there. So this is the system it was updating. And then also that patient diagnosis email was sent. This is, of course, like I said, this was generated by ChatGPT on just the diagnosis. But I did want to tap in and look a little bit about, or look at RPA Manager here. Here you can manage and look at your processes, right? So my RPA process had to go ahead and be put into production before I could use it in MuleSoft Composer, even though I can still test within MuleSoft Composer. After I could, put this and activate it and put it in production, and then it'll kind of be on its own from there. But that is because it is an independent system that's using here MuleSoft Composer. It's but it also does give these sort of results, and I will update that here. All right, so it has 2 successes. And I can again look at the logs here and tell. So if something were to fail in one of these steps, it would tell me, and it can also give me details as well. And just for, let's just see, I'm gonna go ahead and just do another one and see if it will hand me a different, let's do, okay. I'm gonna go ahead and test it again. All right, so while those are hitting, while that's hitting and running, I'm gonna go ahead and show you where, so on-prem, what it's doing is it is, extracting that email and putting it in the new patient form, and then it is picking up, you can see where it picked up. So in this case, in these 2 cases, I did use, like I said, I did use, that might not show as well as fast, but I did use typed, but in past workings, I did use handwritten, and it did work there as well. So what I was able to do is I was able to take a picture of my phone and send it to the email address that it was picking up from and hit from there. All right, it is processing. So while that's processing, okay, so it did hit us with some errors, but let's see. All right, so it looks like RPA, I can go back to it and test and see. It might have been the same error we saw before. It could be a new error, like the one I was explaining. Let's see. Well, I do know that RPA kicked off because those emails have already been moved to the box. And if I hit here, oh, okay, we do have a failure. Let's see. All right, so it failed to extract. It says what? Okay, so this is what I was kind of anticipating, what I wanted to show. So it looks like it failed in extracting data, and it tells me where to. The last action step was get primary group hashtag, which is number. And so something I was experiencing before was because this AWS Amazon Text acting on an AI, it is now sometimes on certain runs it'll convert my what it probably did is it converted that group hashtag into primary group number spelled out. And I've been able to do this with, let's see. Actually, yep, okay, so it didn't complete there. And so likely that's probably what happened. But the idea is I was able to see kind of where it went wrong and what happened, and I knew that it within Composer that it did fail within RPA. So that is that. All right. So just yeah, again on this, it was so if this were running, let's see, it kind of gives you a run history. Let me see if I have any. I might not actually. I don't think I do, but it essentially gives you this almost the same thing as this RPA is doing. Is it gives you an idea of, okay, if it failed, where did it fail in your composer, and then from there you can just figure out sort of kind of troubleshoot it from there. But yeah, that is it. It went to our patient data, it gave us a Slack message, and it returned that patient diagnosis. And you've also seen a little bit of the logs that it gives you when something fails or if it is a success. Okay. All right, and that's about it. So if you have any questions, please connect with me on LinkedIn and just kind of shoot them at me. I will respond when I see them and as quickly as possible. But anyways, thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. And have a great night.